classroom interaction between the teacher and the students and between students and other students is actually the crux of what happens in the classroom. And it is within this interaction that teaching and learning actually takes place. This interaction that we are talking about is based on the concept of good communication. Now, what do we mean by good communication? By good communication or clear communication, we mean that the messages that are conveyed to each other are clearly not only conveyed but clearly interpreted. They are interpreted by the listeners in a way that they are able to see what the intention of the teacher or the student was. So this understanding of each other, clear understanding of each other, is the keystone or the cornerstone of all teaching and learning situations. For me to teach my students and for my students to learn from me, we have to understand what I actually saying, what do I mean by saying what I'm saying, and the students need to interpret it in the same context. However, there is a major issue that comes in this communication, and cultural differences can actually disrupt good communication. So, because there are certain kinds of cultural aspects that might lead me to misinterpret what my teacher is saying, and as a teacher, I might also misinterpret what my student is saying, and not only saying, because when we talk about communication and when we talk about interaction, we also talk about body language. Even the body language in different cultures is seen as differently. And the same body movement, for instance, nod of this head, in Pakistani culture, it might mean that I'm saying, or I agree with what you are saying if I nod my head like this. But in certain cultures, it is when I do like this, that means I agree with you. That means a yes. So this means a yes in some cultures, and this means a no in other cultures, while this is completely reversed in Pakistani culture. So for me to understand my students, what they are saying and what their meaning is, I need to understand these cultural differences to make the communication clear. Now, let's come back to the example that you have in the article, in your article, and we compare Western and Japanese culture. Japanese culture is one example of an aspect of Asian culture. So in Western concept of clear communication, the teachers would mean that there is a clear flow of ideas, there is a discussion, there are solutions, there are problems being discussed, and the learners are engaged in debate, in discussion. And then I will be, as a teacher in a Western context, I will be able to say that yes, there is a clear communication and there is much interaction in the classroom. Now, interestingly, for the Japanese culture, the function of communication is not an exchange of ideas, but to establish human relationships. Now, how does this affect the whole communication? If my focus is on developing good human relationships, then I will be very careful so as not to differ with you. So if I have a different opinion, I will either not express it or do it in a very a very subtle way, and I might even hold my opinions to myself. Now, these different cultural dimensions are very important to keep in mind, and you have this Hofstede who talks about 4 different dimensions in a culture related to identity, hierarchy, truth, and virtue. Now, we will keep on comparing the Japanese culture with the Western culture, using each of these dimensions in which cultures can differ.